Um, so thank you everybody for coming to join the last part of College 101. Again, I'd like to thank Rob, who is representing Bristol Community College and doing this presentation for us today and the last couple of weeks. He is the, let me see if I get this right, the Assistant Director of Admissions. Did I get
Associate
it right?
Director.
Oh, I had you as a dean last time. I should have stuck with that.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. And Kathy, thank you for doing the closed captioning for us. This is the third part, as I said, of a three-part series that we decided to do in this way so that we sort of chunk it up and not feed everybody all this information like it's coming out of a fire hose, and to try to limit as much Zoom time as possible. So many people, I think, are getting tired of this. So hopefully this has been helpful for those who have attended. If this is your first one coming to it and you're just here for the financial aid part, that's great as well. For our sophomores and our freshmen, we will be doing sort of a more in-depth, detailed version of this for juniors. The next year, what we do is our first part is in the fall. We do stuff on the college search process and really get into that. And then in the spring of your junior year, we do an actual presentation on the nuts and bolts of applying to college using Naviance and the Common App and some of the other things that we touch upon. But I think this is a really good way of sort of getting the information initially, being able to sort of process it. So then when we're talking about this as juniors and seniors, for parents and students, it's not all new information. And as we said before, this is a really important time, and I know it's tricky this year, but to do some of that exploration, looking at different colleges, virtually or when possible, in person. Hopefully in the spring, we'll have the campuses will be a little bit more open, and you guys will be able to go out and see some of those. So, but tonight the focus is going to be, I believe, on the financial aid process and sort of what that looks like, understanding the costs and so forth. So I'll let Rob take over, and I will be quiet now. So thanks again, Rob. And I'll be probably jumping in here and there because I can't help myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you again for having me. As you said, this is the third part. The first part, we spoke generally about how to determine where to apply and what things you should consider when looking at colleges and universities. Last week, we focused more on the application process itself and all the very different components that are related to it. And so tonight we are going to talk about how to pay for college, which is probably the most common question and largest concern for a lot of students and families when it comes to this critical time. So I believe everybody already knows that we are going to do a video to start, and so this is kind of a quick illustration of the financial aid process, and then I'll be able to give a little more detail from there. Did the window pop up for you?
If you're interested in financial aid for college...
Sorry, did the window pop up for you?
Yeah, but I can hear it, but I can't see it. So I think you might have to stop sharing, at least on my end.
Let's try this again.
Both of those boxes you got to click on. There it is.
All right.
Let's see if we can hear it.
If you're interested in financial aid for college or career school, you're going to need to fill out the free application for Federal Student Aid, or FAFSA. It takes most people about 30 minutes to complete online, and the best part, it's 100% free, and it provides you with access to grants, loans, and work-study funds from the federal government. And many colleges and states use FAFSA information to provide their own college or state financial aid. Before you fill out the FAFSA, it's a good idea to create your FSA ID, a username and password that lets you electronically sign your FAFSA and gives you access to various websites related to federal student aid. And here's an important tip. If your parent is providing information on your FAFSA, he or she will need his or her own FSA ID. Visit studentaid.gov/FSA ID for more information. Your FAFSA can be completed online at fafsa.gov, and help is provided throughout the online application process. You will need to fill out the FAFSA each year you are in school because your financial situation may change. Plus, you may be able to automatically transfer your tax data from the IRS, making the application even quicker to fill out. Each state and college or career school sets its own deadline for the FAFSA, so it's best to get it done early. Since some of the funds are available on a first-come, first-served basis, you don't want to miss out. Now that you know about the FAFSA, you might be asking, well, how much money will I get? Your college or career school will do the math, and there's a simple formula that they use. First, the college takes your cost of attendance, which is the total amount it will cost you to go to that school. Your cost of attendance will vary from school to school. Then, the college subtracts your expected family contribution, or EFC. Your EFC is based on information provided in your FAFSA and will not change based on the school you attend. However, the EFC is not necessarily the amount of money you will have to pay. Basically, your cost of attendance minus your EFC equals your financial need. Your college uses your financial need and other information to determine how much financial aid you can receive. See? Pretty simple. If you have questions or need more information, please visit studentaid.gov.
All right, so let me close that before another random video starts. So like I said, that is a pretty good overview of the financial aid process, but the title of this section isn't financial aid, it's how do you pay for college? And our advice is always to use free money first. If you are eligible for grant money, that's not something you have to accept through your financial aid office, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that means later. Grant money is just automatically applied to your costs. That's free money the government gives you either at the state or federal level that you do not have to pay back. So any grant money you receive is fantastic. Other free money, scholarships. International merit scholarships, or institutional merit scholarships are scholarships based on grade, based on your high school performance. And a lot of them come with similar requirements in order to continue to receive those scholarships at the institution. So, an institution may say that you're eligible for their merit scholarship if your high school GPA is A- or higher, 3.5 or 4.5 or higher. But in order to maintain that scholarship, for every semester or for every year, you have to maintain a certain GPA as well. There are also private scholarships, scholarships that may come from a local organization like a Rotary Club or a Lions Club, local Elks Lodge. A lot of those local community organizations will provide some additional private scholarship money or book award money to help to continue to help reduce the costs, but usually those are, you'll have to, as you apply for those and research those, see if they are renewable. A lot of those are just one time for your first semester to get you in the door and get you started. Sometimes there are some private scholarships that you may be able to apply for each year. And don't assume that those local scholarships are only for currently graduating seniors. Some of those organizations and some of those scholarships are available for recent alumni. So keep an eye out for those as well. Aside from that free money, another option.
Can I just jump in before you, just to sort of explain how we do it in Norton a little bit? We will have, or we do have a list of scholarships that come to us. They sort of say, hey, this is happening in the area. So the Lions Club or, I don't know, Roach Brothers, somebody like that might be doing, not specific to Norton, but to the general area, or there are statewide scholarships. So we will put that up under the in Aviance in our particular section of scholarships available. So there'll be a list that we maintain. So that's one way of getting scholarships. And then our senior year right before February vacation. We have a form that we process with all of the seniors. The seniors have to apply, and that is for like all of the scholarships that are kind of Norton centered, that are designated for Norton students specifically. So it might be everything from local businesses to things that the boosters clubs do or Wheaton puts on. Like, they're very specific to Norton, and it's just basically one form that gets filled out and then is reviewed either by a scholarship committee, or in some cases, they want that information sent to the actual the committee of the actual scholarship, and then they send that back to us. So that's basically how we manage those and get the information out to the students.
Excellent. Aside from scholarships, another free option, so to speak, are payment plans. So when you have compiled all of your when you've compiled all of your outside money, whether it is through grants or scholarships, look at what your remaining costs are and see if there's a way that those might be broken up to be paid over the course of the semester. So at Bristol, for example, typically for a student enrolling for our fall semester, they'll get their bill in July, and that bill will be due early in August. That's usually end of July, early August is the timeline for billing for the fall semester. And so what a lot of schools will do is say, look, if you put 25% of that total cost down, then you can pay that first payment in the summer, the second payment in September, a third in October, and a fourth in November, or something along those lines. There's sometimes a small fee or a small percentage associated with that, but it just makes it a little more manageable rather than dropping the entire lump sum all in one payment. So again, those are some free money options. Aside from those are the loans. The video we just watched talks about the FAFSA offering 3 types of money: grant money, which again is the free money that you don't have to pay back; work study, which I'm going to talk about shortly; and loans. The federal loans come in three different versions. There's the subsidized loan, the unsubsidized loan, and the Parent Plus loan. The subsidized loan are the ideal loans. These are loans that you will take out that you can borrow while you're enrolled for each semester or each year. You can borrow that money, put it towards your education, and that money won't start accruing interest until after you have graduated, or after you're no longer enrolled, and then it will start accruing interest as you start paying it back. The unsubsidized loans are a little trickier. Those loans will begin accruing interest when you borrow. So while you're borrowing that money over the course of your college career, what you're borrowing is accruing interest, and then you're going to start adding interest on top of that as you start paying it off when you're no longer enrolled, either because you graduated or withdrew or whatever else. So the subsidized loan is the less expensive loan. So those are, if you are offered subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans and you only need one, then I would say go with the subsidized loan, because that's going to save you money in the long run. The plus loans are loans that, for one reason or another, the federal government thinks that the parent should be involved in signing off on those loans, and so for the parent or guardian, they're essentially saying that you are also responsible for having this repaid. It's as if you were signing off on a car, it's as if you were a co-signer on a car loan for your student. So your name is also on that loan application. If borrowing the federal loans does not cover the cost, or doesn't get the cost down to a point where you can cover it out of pocket, then you can start researching some private loan options, and that's where organizations like MEFA and Sallie Mae come in. MEFA is the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, and every spring MEFA actually does a formal presentation about the financial aid process in a lot more detail. You guys have that at Norton High School, right, Mr. Searcy? the MIFA nights?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Yes, we do. Typically, this year, MEFR is not doing any nights. They're not even doing
Okay.
Zooms. But they have set up their own webinars that are either live or recorded, and that information has gone out. But I think by the time most of the folks that are on this call will get there, God willing, we'll be back to doing regular MEFR nights, or maybe Zoom, or maybe everybody will be doing a version of this because more people can access it. But yes, we absolutely do that. We also, because we want to give multiple opportunities, we've worked with Citizens Bank, who does a version of a talk about the financial aid system, and also AAA, believe it or not, comes in and does some work. They do a lot of work with families, especially members. They do individual consultations for those of you who might have students that are now graduating college. If there's any of those folks out there, they'll actually meet with the members who have the children of members, or if they're members themselves, and sort of look at whether there's consolidating loans makes sense. So they do a lot of work as well. So
excellent. So the benefit, the reason we identify the federal loans first, typically federal loans have lower interest rates. Even the unsubsidized loan, although you're kind of getting hit twice with interest, it tends to be they both tend to be lower interest rates than what MEFA and Sallie Mae offer. So that's why the federal are usually the better option. I also want to pause here to talk about, I'm going to go more into the FAFSA shortly, but there's a myth out there that some students don't qualify for financial aid. I can't tell you how many times I hear someone say, yeah, I'm not going to bother filling that out because I don't think my mom or dad don't think I'm going to qualify. Everyone qualifies for financial aid. Every single student that fills out the FAFSA is given some kind of a financial aid award. It never hurts to find out what kind of aid you're eligible to receive. Like I said, grant money just automatically goes towards your costs. That's the free money. You don't have to pay it back. If you fill out the FAFSA and all you are offered are loans, then you have a choice. You're not legally required to take those loans. If you need them and have a way to pay them back after you graduate, then you can use them. But if you and your family are in a fortunate enough situation where you don't necessarily need to borrow that extra money, and that's just all you get, you can reject those loans and go ahead with one of the payment plan options. So it never hurts to fill out the financial aid application just to see what's available and to help you make a more educated decision on what your plan is. Because again, as the video said, each school will calculate based on their tuition and fees what your aid amounts will be. So a student that's enrolling at Bristol, for example, if they get a grant, if they get the Pell Grant, the federal Pell Grant, that's going to cover the cost of their tuition and fees. That's going to be about $6,000 at Bristol. The Pell Grant at a more expensive institution may be higher. Loans at Bridgewater State University, you may get a loan package that's smaller, but covers a higher chunk of the tuition and fee and housing costs associated with your year there. Whereas that same student could apply for financial aid, be awarded a larger loan for Wheaton or Stonehill, but the larger loan doesn't cover as much of the total cost of the tuition and fees and housing and meal plan and everything like that. So those loan numbers can vary based on institution. So no matter what, at least fill out the financial aid at the FAFSA just to get the details and make the most educated decision for what you're trying to do. Outside of loans, then you can start looking at other income. Work Study is a federally funded program for students that are planning to get a job on campus. A lot of these are clerical jobs within offices. So we have Work Study students in our admissions office that help lead campus tours, or they may do data entry on transfer credits from other institutions, things like that. Other work-study jobs at some institutions include, lifeguarding at the school's pool or staffing the gym 2 or 3 times a week, working in the dining hall or working in the student life office, things like that. There's always the opportunity to get part-time jobs off campus, or a lot of students will get part-time jobs around home, even if they're living away at college and they're coming home on the weekends, just to work to make some extra money to help cover additional costs back at school. And if families are in a position to do so, any savings or college fund that you might be able to create to start putting money aside, as long as that money is used for educational purposes, that is tax-free money once it's withdrawn. So that's another funding source that some families are able to plan for to help pay for college once they get to that point. So we already saw the video that talked about the FSA ID. Both the student and the guardian of the student have to create an FSA ID. The FAFSA is focused entirely on the student's immediate family's income. And you may wonder what exactly I mean by that. If the student is living with both of their parents or married guardians, like both their grandparents or other family members like that, then the student will complete the FAFSA with their FSA ID, and the married guardians will do the same. If a student is in a situation where the parents are divorced, the student will fill out the FAFSA, and the custodial parent, the student that the parent primarily lives with, will also fill out the FAFSA. The income for the other parent will not be considered on the FAFSA. As a reminder, this is an application that has to be filled out every year because, as the video said, people's financial situation can change. Sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's for the worse. FAFSA now uses what's called prior year information. So what that means, in the past, the FAFSA would become available on January 1st. So we're approaching January 1st, 2021. For next year, in the past, the FAFSA used to be available on January 1, 2021, and it would use your 2020 tax information. Because colleges and universities have earlier financial aid deadlines, FAFSA moved their availability back. So you can see that first bullet there. Make sure you know the financial aid priority deadline for all of the institutions that you're planning to apply to, so that you meet those deadlines and get as much money as possible. Students that don't meet our financial aid deadline of April 1st are not guaranteed opportunity to get state grant money that they may be eligible for. So that's an additional $500 per semester at an institution that only costs $3,000 for a semester. $500 is a good chunk of change. But students that miss that priority deadline are not guaranteed that state grant that they may be eligible for. So it's important to know the priority deadline, get the FAFSA in, and allow a couple of weeks for FAFSA to process the information, send it to the institution so that they can create an award. The FAFSA, like I said, becomes available each year on October 1st. And because the 2021 financial aid application became available in 2020, and that tax information is not available yet, those students would be submitting 2019 tax information. It's the prior year. So you would be able to use that 2019 information. Federal government assesses your tax information and lets the institutions know what you may be eligible for. The institutions do their own calculation and send you a financial aid award based on that information. If things have changed for a lot of families, their 2019 tax information was a pre-COVID, much better financial situation than what 2020 has given them. So this is a good year for this example. If something has happened that your 2019 that your 2019 tax information is no longer accurate, most schools will have a reconsideration form where you can say, this is what my tax information was for that year, but that's no longer accurate. Here's what you really need to consider. And that will absolutely impact what their financial aid package looks like. So again, the FAFSA only uses your tax information. There is what's called a data retrieval tool that students and families can use. If you did file taxes in that year, as long as all of the information on your tax documents matches what's on your FAFSA, then the FAFSA will very easily be able to just pull all of your tax information over from the IRS database. If not, then the FAFSA will take a little longer because you will have to add in all of the details from your tax information, from your tax documents. When I say the information has to be exact, if you live at 448 North Main Street in Norton, Massachusetts, and on your tax information, you write 448 N period Main Street ST period, but on your FAFSA, you write out the word North, the IRS is not going to identify that as a match. So when you're going to fill out your FAFSA, it may be helpful just to have your information there, just so that you're putting the information in identically to save you a lot of time on filling all of it out. If you don't file taxes, the college or university will ask for any other income information, whether you're receiving Social Security benefits, unemployment, disability funds, anything along those lines, just because they do need to have an accurate idea of how much money to make available to you. Most schools will only require the FAFSA for them to create a financial aid package for you. More expensive institutions, so typically private institutions, will also require what's called a CSS profile. This is a form available through College Board that is a much more in-depth analysis of your financial situation for your entire family. So like I said, with the FAFSA, for a student that's in that has divorced parents, the FAFSA is only going to look at theirs and their parents' tax information, the custodial parents' tax information. For that same student, if both parents are divorced and have since remarried, the CSS profile is not only going to want your custodial parents' tax information, but the CSS profile will also go into details about any assets for the custodial parent and the step parent, as well as the other birth parent and that step parent. And when I say assets, we're talking about what are the values of the homes that these people live in? How many cars do you have? Do you have boats? Do you have motorcycles? Do you have second homes and vacation homes? And what are the balances of your retirement accounts? And do you have money invested in stocks? And what are the values of those? This is a much more in-depth analysis because they want to know every possible funding source that you could tap into to cover the cost of their institution. So again, it's typically only required by private institutions. And even those are some of the more expensive institutions. Not all schools will require it, but just know that it is far more in-depth and covers a lot more information than what the FAFSA will require. After you, and when you fill out the FAFSA, you can list up to 10 colleges and universities on that application. So any school that you submit an admissions application to, you should also add to your FAFSA. You can make changes to institutions. So I've seen some students that have applied to, 10 institutions, sent their FAFSA to 10 institutions. And then as they've gotten word back from different schools, they may replace an institution with another school after they've applied for admission there. Other times, I've had students that have just applied to UMass Dartmouth or just applied to Bridgewater State. But then as their financial aid award letters came in, they realized it really wasn't going to work. So they're going for the less expensive option, which is Bristol. And so they'll go ahead, log into the FAFSA, add Bristol as an institution. The FAFSA will send the information to us, and then we'll be able to create an award letter for that student. So after you have completed the FAFSA, like I said, it takes a week or two for the application to be processed and sent to all of the colleges that you applied to. They then do all of their math and send you out what's called a financial aid award letter. And that will detail for the fall semester and for the spring semester. This is how much money you're going to get in the form of a grant. This is how much money you're going to get in the form of a loan. This is some work study money that might be available to you. For some of the more expensive institutions, for institutions that have them available, it will also include any merit scholarship information. For more expensive institutions, sometimes they have an institution-based grant or an institution-based scholarship that they also award. And those will often they may have additional applications for additional scholarships, but they may also just award them based on your admissions application because of involvement or academics or things like that. So make sure you understand what that financial aid award looks like. Find out if you need to do any additional paperwork. The FAFSA does select people for what they call random verification. If you are chosen for random verification, please know it is not the institution's fault. It is solely from the federal government, and you may get selected for random verification by one institution and not another. Random verification means that you need to provide some additional tax documents or the tax documents that you use to complete the FAFSA. They just need it to be submitted to the institution for verification purposes. Sometimes, like I said, you may need to submit disability paperwork or Social Security benefits, unemployment benefits. Sometimes you need to verify that you have not completed a bachelor's degree. Every institution may have some additional forms that you need to submit in order to actually receive the money that has been awarded to you. If necessary, absolutely reach out about additional scholarships, work study opportunities. And like we said with last week's session, just like with the admissions process, the financial aid process requires you to be on top of all of the deadlines and on top of whether or not scholarships and loans are renewable. Remembering to submit that FAFSA every single year. That the one FAFSA you fill out before you enroll does not cover you for the entire time you're at that institution. You do have to reapply every year. So make sure that you're paying attention to all of those deadlines for scholarship applications, paperwork deadlines. Make sure you're on top of all of those. Be sure that you are looking at any requirements, deadlines, and whether or not they are renewable for private scholarships as well. So we do typically, when we are not, when we are in person, I do typically go into a number of reasons why you should consider Bristol Community College because we have you as a captive audience. But I think I've talked enough about Bristol as we've gone through the last couple of weeks, and I'm sure you'll hear more about Bristol over your next couple of years at Norton High School. But generally speaking, we're a very high quality education that's identified by the transferability of our courses to colleges and universities all over the US. But we do that at a great price. Like I mentioned tonight, we're about $6,000 per year. When you compare that to some of the more expensive private institutions, as we saw in the first session, and even compared to some of the state universities, UMass campuses that are accepting our credits as equal to their classes, you're paying a fraction of the cost. So it's a great way to save a significant chunk of change over your first 2 years before going on for the rest of your bachelor's degree. So I'll leave the initial Bristol pitch at that, but
So
I did want
a couple of things, just as I was thinking about it, just reiterating, for folks maybe who again, have older children, or, remember doing the fast for themselves, or have heard from folks who have had, older children themselves about how difficult the FAFSA is. They've made it significantly easier now because you can automatically upload from the IRS your tax documents. So something that, what is it now, been about 6 years, I think, something like that they've done that. I can't remember, but something that used to take you hours and hours, and going line by line through your tax forms has been increasingly easier. So that was one thing I was going to say. The other piece, we talked a little bit about the merit scholarships that other institutions, especially private institutions, give. Much of that is connected directly to your GPA. For those folks that are out there, our students. So, again, as we talked about, I think in one of our other sessions, GPA is people definitely take in that slow increase, right, from freshman to sophomore years. But remember that GPA is your GPA. So, there may be in some private institutions, if you're at a 3.0, you're eligible for $5,000 a year. If you're at a 3.2, you're at $10,000 a year, and so forth and so on. So, it really does matter. A GPA, I think, is extremely important. The other thing I would say is for some of the private institutions too, as Rob said, they as we had said in the prior meetings here, they need you as much as you need them. So do not be afraid to go back and sort of say, well, I'd love to come to, I'll just use this one, Quinnipiac, but whatever, PC offered me this. And so if you can come up with another $3,000 a year or $5,000 a year, I probably would go to your institution. That does work. It doesn't always work. Some institutions are amenable to that. Others will very straight say, this is what you get. There's no discussion. So, but it does not, it doesn't hurt to ask. And I know many cases, including my own, where it did work. So there you go. Don't be afraid, especially nowadays, as we said, the next few years are going to be very, very competitive. So please understand that.
Yeah, it's all about the out-of-pocket costs. And during the first session, I talked about accepted students days. A lot of those, especially a lot of accepted students days, give you an opportunity to meet with the financial aid staff. And what that means is they put financial aid staff in this big room with a counselor at each table. You put your name on a list and they call you up and they say, okay, you filled out your FAFSA. This is what you're going to get. What other questions do you have?
Right.
Other times it will be an actual scheduled appointment with a financial aid counselor. And that's where you can, that's usually at some of the more expensive. There was one institution I worked at where I'll never forget, there were dozens of people out in the lobby and each financial aid counselor was bringing people into the office. And the people were doing just what you said, I'm speaking with someone from Northeastern, BU gave me this much money, which gets my out-of-pocket costs to this. You haven't offered as much money, but if you just offer this much more, it's not going to be as much as what BU offered me, but it's going to get my out-of-pocket costs to the same point. And since Northeastern is my preferred school, can you make that happen? So that negotiation absolutely is available. The other,
and I think, so I was going to say, and I think that's really important. Gets back to when, and we'll talk a lot about this when you're juniors and seniors, but of making sure that you go, if these are schools that you're really interested in and you're really thinking, these are the top 3 schools, you want to make sure you go on campus. You want to make sure that you register for open houses and attend open houses and get onto their websites and look around because they're tracking you, and register and really show an interest. Go multiple times, because if you've only gone once or twice, or you've only applied, and even that may be your top school, but you really haven't demonstrated that, they're probably going to think, well, what are the chances of this person actually accepting here? Vinny says he wants to come here, but he hasn't been here, and he wants an additional $5,000. But Rob's been here 6 times, and he wants that $5,000. I'm going to bet on Rob and give him the money, thinking he's more likely to come than Vinny is. So I think it really is, making sure that you get out there for those schools that you're interested, physically and electronically. Stay online, follow it around. We'll talk a lot more about this, I know, but again, even showing interest as sophomores. I know, again, I'm using my own example, but they knew that my son had been at Quinnipiac as a sophomore. They knew that he had signed up for their emails and stuff as a sophomore. And so, him going back junior year and then senior year demonstrated that that was the school he wanted to attend. So definitely something to do. I have a question. Let's see. Yes, the recordings, I thought they had been put up. I will double check with our communications department and make sure they do get up. It will be underneath. It'll be on the website. Sorry, I'm having trouble speaking today. It'll be on the website under the guidance department, and then under presentations and college applications or college preparation. So they should be up there. If they're not, I'll get on that because those two should have already been up. So we'll get those posted for you. Do we have any other questions from the audience? If so, please put them in the Q&A. And I didn't know, sorry, Rob, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No problem. And I'll take questions while I've got a few minutes. If you have questions about previous sessions or any other part of the process, I'm absolutely willing to answer those as well. But you mentioned how much easier the FAFSA is now than it was even 5 or 6 years ago. I had to do a paper FAFSA.
Oh, I remember that. Yes.
But
yeah, we're that old.
but it made me remember some folks are concerned about putting a lot of that information online. It is exception. It's a federal website, so it is exceptionally secure. But if for whatever reason someone would prefer to do a paper FAFSA, those are still available.
Yeah. That's
so
a good
don't
point.
think the online FAFSA is the only option. It's a lot quicker. It's a lot easier. But they understand people's concerns with that and are accommodating to that.
I think the other thing to make sure that when you do, you go to the fafsa.gov. There are other fafsa.org and fafsa.com, and you go through the whole process and you do everything. And then at the end, they say, okay, for $25, we'll submit this to the government. There's no reason to go through any of those. But they get a significant enough people. So just make sure you go to the right one. And again, I know for most folks here, your parents, the sophomores and freshmen, you've got a ways to go. This is more of an overview. We'll definitely get into a little bit more detail. Again, you're getting a ton of information. We try to break it up and give it into many different, give it to you at different chunking points throughout the next few years. So I'm hoping for folks this was beneficial. And I do appreciate right now anybody getting onto a Zoom at this point, because I think we're all tired of it. But I do appreciate it. So I don't see any more questions. If there is any, last chance, right? All right. Well, that being said, Rob, thank you so much for doing these 3 weeks in a row. I truly appreciate it. Kathy's out there doing a closed caption. I appreciate you doing it as well. For our parents and students who have come tonight, thank you very much. Enjoy your snow day tomorrow. If you haven't heard, we're having a traditional snow day. I think the idea of just let kids be kids again is nice, and the fact that who knows who will have power and who won't in Norton, because we're notorious for not having power. So everybody enjoy the day, stay safe, and again, thank you very much, Rob and Kathy.
Yep. Thank you for having me. Happy holidays, everyone.